And we are back with the day 39 of Survivor 46 and 46. Tommy just won Survivor Island of the Idols, in which it'll be the last bad season that I have to watch before I'm done with all of this. So that's exciting. But we are going to try to keep things as positive as possible when talking about the season, because I do think that there are a lot of fun things that happened this season. So we're joined once again by Gurman, and for the first time this time around, we have Josh from Future Past Survivor. I'll start with you, Josh. When Island of the Idols first came out, and as you went through the season and got to the end, just the first time watching it, how were you feeling throughout all of it? Like, what did you kind of drop off when certain things started to happen, or did you finish it all the way through?
I definitely finished it. Yes. I kept up live, but did I feel great about that? Absolutely not, of course. I have such complicated feelings around this season, because I think it's not, for me personally, not the worst season of Survivor. I think it's a bad season of Survivor. But there are some redeeming qualities to it, to the point where I don't have it as like the bottom of bottomest tiers of my rankings. But the experience of watching it live was horrifying, as it was for, all reasonable people watching Survivor.
Yeah, and so I want to piggyback off of that. I saw your poll that you put out on Twitter earlier about asking people how people felt about it. Who ended up winning that? What ended up winning that poll?
Yeah, I was just trying to pull that up here. So the poll was simple. I figure most people have this as their bottom season or close to it. So I know when RHAP did their vote for,
it was 40 out of 40.
Yeah, it was the last of all the seasons ranked at the time of season 40. So yeah, it was the bottom. And so I was curious how people felt. So I give people 4 options. Is it the worst season of all time? Is it the second worst season of all time? Is it the third worst season of all time? Or is it the fourth worst season? Or is it not a bottom 3 season for you? That was the 4 options. So Gurman, I'll ask you, how many people do you think have it in the bottom 3?
Ooh,
what percentage?
I would say at least 40% have it in the bottom 3.
So it is whopping 76% have it in the bottom 3. So it is very, very much disliked. And so the breakdown from there, 53% have it as the bottom 2. So more than half of, there's only got 65 votes in the last few hours. So it's not, not polling the entire.
But I feel like that's still a decent sample size of Survivor fans.
Yeah. So then, and then 33. So 1/3 of all people polled said this is their worst season. So I would not fall into that camp. I wouldn't even put it in my bottom 3. I think, I'll wrap it up here. But Thailand, something like that, there is almost nothing redeeming about it for me. Yeah, that is my bottom season. This season has Janet, Elaine, some good moments in the midst of some horrifying stuff that happens at the merge. But I just think that there's enough where I actually have some emotional positive reaction to it, to the point where it's not just all a wash for me.
Okay, and so Gurman, going off of that, what made you want to cover this season? Because you chose this. What made you want to do this season this time around?
It's a very niche and stupid reason. When it comes to winner rankings, me and my friend Josh have been debating a lot, and I have put Tommy extremely high on my winner rankings for a long time. However, I've always said that I only watched Island of the Idols once, and I barely paid attention during the second half. So I remembered Tommy being extremely dominant and good throughout the game, but I never felt like I could actually back up if Tommy was a good winner or not. So one of my main reasons of rewatching this season was to see if my opinion on Tommy was correct or not.
You were looking for validation.
Exactly. But coming with that was watching everything horrible in the second half of the season, and good fucking God. I would put this as my third least favorite season. I believe that Thailand is the worst season of all time, and
It
I
is.
hate Karamoan as my second worst season of all time.
Karamoan
After
actually.
that, I got to put this.
Karamoan has actually come up this time around watching. Like, it's still Karamoan, but like it's no longer in the depths of my list. And I will say that I'll say this: the first time I watched this season wasn't live, so I knew about everything that had happened. And in my head, I was just kind of like waiting for it. I was like, I had this not the eternal dread. I had this dark cloud of like dread hanging over me of like, I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. And the first time I watched the season, I was so checked out from the beginning, knew what was going to happen. And then when I did this for 40 and 40 and 42 and 42, I knew going in, let me just watch this with fresh eyes. And every single time, I would say that the pre-merge is one of the best pre-merges of the 30s. Like, I actually cared about a lot of the stuff that was happening pre-merge. I heard about a lot of the moves that were being made during the pre-merge. I cared about a lot of the characters. The Island of the Idols twist, although very silly, I did enjoy watching people, come to the realization of what the Island of the Idols was. It came off as very corny and redundant at a certain point, and similar to like Ghost Island and things like that. It started putting targets on people's backs, but there was a lot to go. There was a lot to. They had a lot of momentum going into the merge, and we're gonna talk about that at some point. But Josh, pre-merge wise, thoughts? Oh, Josh is here now. Okay, hold on. I didn't realize he was frozen. Josh, pre-merge wise, what did you think of the season?
No, pre-merge. This season was cooking. This season was definitely on a good trajectory. Okay, the Robin Sandra thing, campy, stupid as hell, but kind of worked. I mean, like,
It kind of worked.
Yeah, Rob and Sandra are. I know people there's a lot of these online Survivor snobs. Shut up, Rob and Sandra. Two of the most entertaining people we've ever seen play any sort of reality show. They've proved that over and over again. Even most recently, Sandra on The Traders, Boston Rob on Deal or No Deal Island. Like, they can still serve. And even just having them pop in for a few minutes, I did not think that was like. It would have been horrible if the season was like somehow way more centered around them and they took up more than just a few minutes each episode, but I did not mind having them out there. Now, the one gripe I had with that is the fact that the contestants had to lie about them being out there. That is a unprecedented thing to put on contestants, which I can elaborate later, but I want to stick to the answer of your question, which is I thought the pre-merge worked really well. I thought that even having a narrative structure to how you provide twists and advantages is actually really important to Survivor, and something I don't think a lot of people think about. I'm a literature major. I have a writing background. Like, I think it's really important to not just feel like advantages and idols are just like randomly found in the jungle. The Beware advantage mechanics of the new era are a little funky sometimes, and sometimes they force people to way overplay in the early part of the game, and it blows up the game, all that stuff. But like, I think the idea of what Survivor's trying to go for, of like having this be a moment, a story, a journey, and how you kind of like advance your game instead of it just being a random thing that just like happens to you because you look in the right crevice of a tree. Like, I like that a lot better. And Island of the Idols might have done that better than any other season as far as like how they gave people these like special powers in the game. And so I liked it. I genuinely thought it was like a fun idea. And why not just throw something at the wall like this and just have fun with it?
And that's what it is with the 30s. And I'm going to go to you with this. The 30s are plagued, depending how you look at them, plagued with silly themes that can sometimes work and sometimes not. And I obviously, when they started going to Fiji, you just felt like, oh, we have this extra island over here. Let's do something with it. Let's have an Edge of Extinction. Let's have a Ghost Island. Let's have, Island of the Idols. And I will say that I did prefer the twist, I guess, of Island of the Idols over Ghost Island. I did enjoy what went into it, despite it being corny. I think it's it's what Ghost Island should have been. I said this in the Ghost Island pod, where I felt like if they had some of the players there on Ghost Island that could give them the advantage and be like, hell yeah, I screwed up, but like maybe this time you won't screw up. As far as the twists of this era, German, do you feel like Island of the Idols should be more appreciated, or do you just feel like even this brings the season down?
So I think that at the start of the season, it should be incredibly praised. I think that Boston Rob and Sandra put their most impressive lesson ideas at the front of the season. And as the season got on, they had less and less ideas that made sense or even were worth anything. At the beginning, it's like, can you beat Boston Rob in a fire duel? Have you been paying attention to everything we've been saying and convince your tribe to do this? And there was that one in the second half with Lauren that was pretty good too. But after the first four in the Lauren, most of them are the most forgettable things.
Yeah.
Of all
Dean
time.
has to flip a coin. Yeah, Dean flips a coin.
Yeah. And it's like, we're teaching you a lesson, and we'll talk about the Jamal one later, which is one of the worst moments in Survivor.
Oh my goodness.
History. But they front loaded these ideas majorly. And you see the potential of how good this idea could be, because yes, Boston Rob is an extraordinary, confessionalist, and getting his confessionals mixed in does improve the season. Same with Sandra. And I like the box where they watch Tribal Council. I actually think that was a good idea. You get to see an audience commentary on these tribals.
Yeah. Sandra's so good. Ooh, they play fast.
It's good. I like it. It's like having the two Muppets that critique all of the shows, they're at every tribal. I love it. But again, they had so many good ideas at the beginning, and then by the end it was just flip a coin. We're just done. Fucking go home. Who cares?
Josh, you're gonna say
no, I agree. The viewing box was definitely a inspired invention by the producers. It would have been some of the best moments of Rob and Sandra is them in that booth, just watching all the Nora of it all unfold in front of them, just laughing at some of this horrible gameplay that's happening. And so you kind of, sometimes, you get very fun juror reactions, in the post-merge. And we kind of just got that from the beginning, but instead they also could give us their commentary. And also on top of that, they're two of the best commentators around, to say anything about Survivor. So I just think that the fact that they were just whispering to each other and stuff, that part was so great. That was so fun. I honestly just wish they should just bring that back.
Yates box on every season.
Courtney Yates.
At the back of Tribal Council saying, what the fuck is going on? I'd love it.
To answer this question, no, they didn't drop it. And the only reason I remember that is because the round that Karishma goes home, Rob even says all of that, and they're going to vote out Karishma. And that's the only box moment that I remember post Kelly. I think during the Kelly or the Jamal vote, Rob says, because Jamal talks about something, and Sandra goes, that's very well spoken. That's another reason I remember that, nothing about Merge really stands out to me as that I can remember.
You just watched it today, Drew. What do you mean?
And I know what I'm saying. I checked out again, and once again, we'll talk about the Merge when the Merge happens. Some of these pre-Merge characters, because this is an issue that the season kind of runs into a bunch of cliches at the same time at the beginning of the season, where we have an all-women's alliance fear. We have an outcasts fear. We're trying to get rid of the social threats. Round one. And Rob and Sandra, I think when Elizabeth goes there, they're like, that's the problem with all these new school players. They're all so they have low impulse control. And I just felt like it was weird. It was weird seeing something that we really hadn't seen much during this era of people just being afraid of all these things at the exact same time. The social threat more than anything else. The fact that they want to get rid of Elaine first because she's so nice. The fact that is still a thing in season 39 when there is more proof that's not going to be the case. You know, you can have a Dawn or somebody at the end that has a sob story and won't win the game. So it's weird to me that they had labeled her as that. Who are the going just character? Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Said, remember, this is the first season where we went from Lynn Spillman casting to Jeff Probst casting. And I think that is incredibly important, where even though this is a pre-New Era season, this is the first glimpse into New Era casting that we ever get. And I think it's a big difference in terms of the people here that want to play like way too fucking hard right off the bat. I mean, you look at the Vince vote, you look at the Chelsea vote, you look at the Molly vote, and these people, it's like they've been in quarantine and COVID, even though this was before COVID. Yeah. And they just got out there when they're starved and we have to make a big move within 5 seconds of the fucking game opening. And it's like, calm down. Like, let's breathe. Let's have a social interaction. There is a difference here. And it's funny where Dan, we'll talk about him more later, is one of the only remnants of Lynn Spillman casting. But the rest of this cast is mostly from Jeff Probst casting. And it is fascinating when you think of it that way.
Yeah, and I've talked a lot about the casts of the 30s and how as we get closer and closer to 41, a lot of the qualms that people have with 41 onwards actually start in the 30s. Like, it starts pretty early in the 30s too, but I do agree though that like you can tell this season, you know, there's a lot of people that are let's go straight game mode without making the bonds. And we're going to talk about that final three because that is a very large storyline at the final three. Josh, pre-merge characters. Who stood out to you?
Well, first I got to pour one out to my boy Jason, who was unfairly like booted from stupid twist, whatever. I don't even, whatever. But also got a shout out to Vince. Great character, great moment with the I think maybe my favorite Island of the Idols like visit and then subsequent mission that he has to go on. So I'm gonna just go ahead and shout out them too as the first that come to my mind.
Okay. I mean, I liked Vince. I think that Vince's story, you know, was wrapped up pretty well.
Yeah, I like little like tightly knit narratives like that, where it's like, yeah, we didn't need him for the whole season, or you know, like, but it just he came, he burned bright, and he left, and he was fine.
And he left with an idol in his pocket. You know, and then we have people like Molly, who is. The editing of her boot episode was weird. That's the case with a few boots in the pre-merge where it's just all of a sudden it's like, nope, now it's Molly, and we're going to go into tribal and we're going to do that. I thought that Molly was fine. Once again, she gets labeled. I think she was one that labeled, oh yeah, it's basically just Parvati. It's like, I feel like y'all are just really running this into the ground at this point. Pretty women does not equal Parvati. It equals pretty woman who can play the game.
It's like she's the last one to be compared to Parvati, right? It never happens again after her.
I don't think it ever happens again. At least not until 41. Yeah, we have actual Parvati out there next season. So, so you know, outside of that, I love the challenges pre-merge this season. It felt like I know that because they're in Fiji, we get a lot of repetition with the challenges. I didn't feel that way, and I don't know, you know, why, but like pre-merge this time around, I really enjoyed a lot of the challenges, and just like I keep saying, it had so much momentum going. Yes, we have a Dan moment 20 minutes into the first episode where Molly is saying, you know, Molly and Kelly are sitting on the beach talking about it, and then you kind of just put it in. I compare it to like Jean Robert, just like, all right, if that's the last we hear of it. It's still messed up, but that's the last we hear of it. We have a lot of cultural, I guess, moments this season. Two specifically pre-merge. The one is the do-rag incident, and the other being the Jamal saying, you know, there's all women's alliance, and Kelly talking about everything goes into it. Both of you are going to cover one or each. Josh, we'll start with you. What did you think of that, the do-rag moment between Jack and Jamal? And do you feel like it was handled, like, on screen, how it was portrayed to us? Do you think it was handled well, I guess?
Personally, I thought it was a beautiful moment. I thought this is like just something that really only Survivor can do well. Like, you know, there's obviously on other reality TV shows, there are plenty of cultural misunderstandings, cross-cultural miscommunications and, you know, breakdowns. But I think that I honestly, I really, I mean, okay, wait, I want to, I'll start with Jack. I think that Jack showed himself to be a person of great character in that moment. He was ignorant. He made a comment. Jamal educated him and he took it, received the feedback, and felt grateful. He's giving a confessional afterwards saying, like, I'm so glad. And I feel like this brought us closer as friends. And like, just for anybody who finds themselves in uncomfortable situations where they don't understand, you know, maybe something and put their foot in their mouth or, you know, feel ignorant to something and, you know, somebody shares that that's hurtful or, you know, offensive or something, to have that reaction, it modeled it. Just go watch Jack and take some notes. But I'm starting with Jack because really the most of the praise needs to go to Jamal. And just Jamal is like, I want him to teach me everything. Like just the way he articulates things,
Yes.
the way that he's obviously so intelligent, obviously so like well spoken, but like he also had a lot of compassion for Jack. And like it wasn't, it just I thought it was so admirable of him to both take this moment to talk to, you know, Jack, but also to us at home and explain it so thoroughly, like in such a beautifully nuanced way, what exactly was going on with his own internal process. And then again, like I know him and Jack were like roommates or something after the season. Like it did like legitimately bond them after this. Like they were friends, you know, and like I don't know. So I love that moment. And like I know like again a lot of gross stuff happens on Survivor seasons, whatever. And like I just thought the fact that they were able to stop down, have this, and use it as a moment to build more trust and connection, and then to teach people at home. I just thought like chef's kiss. This is perfect.
It didn't get turned into game stuff, and that can't be said about other things that we're going to get to. Gurman, on the other end of that, we get to the tribal right before the merge, and I want to talk about that actual tribal after we talk about conversation that is had, where, you know, Kelly or Jamal says, you know, I'm just going to be honest, there's a women's numbers advantage here, blah, blah, blah. And Kelly is like, you know, rightfully, you know, calls it out as sexist. And she says, Jamal, I know you don't mean for it to come off this way because I know that you feel this way about these types of issues. Do you think that that was handled in the right way? Because it's so disgustingly ironic that is the episode right before everything starts to happen. Like we're having a Me Too conversation the episode before an incident occurs. What did you think about that tribal just from that aspect before we talk about it as a whole? Because there's a lot that happens yeah.
I do want to do a brief backtrack to just one other thing that I want to say was really cool with the Jamal Jack moment was that Jamal says, hey, I need a moment. And then we flash forward to nighttime for the remainder of that conversation. And, you know, I honestly think that's a really important thing where you think of, and I know it's, you know, Andrew's crush, you know, Hannah, where she betrays Zeke and Adam and at very different degrees, but she like, hey, can I say I'm sorry? Hey, can I say I'm sorry for the entire nighttime? And they're like, whoa, we need a fucking moment. You know, Jack was in a really uncomfortable situation, but he listened to that. Jamal needed a moment. And then and he gave Jamal that space, came back at night, and then they were able to reconnect and have that moment. And I think that's such an important thing that people need to realize, you know, give people the time they need to process, and then you can have the conversation afterwards instead of just like, I feel really bad. Let's just like address my grievances immediately because I don't want to feel like I'm a bad guy. Let the person be upset for a while because that's important. People, when they're, you know, have grievances, need to like actually breathe and let that in. And then you can have that conversation afterwards. If you just like want to feel like, oh, everything's forgiven immediately, you normally won't get that forgiveness you actually crave because the person never actually got to grieve and go through those emotions. So I think that was a very important thing that happened in that moment. Similarly, I think that Jamal actually did, like in this current tribal, recognize his mistakes, immediately. He didn't immediately ask for forgiveness. He, very much did similar things to what Jack did. Of course, you have to do it in a quicker span of time than what Jack did, but Jamal, recognized he, what he did wrong. I think it was pretty handled well by Jeff, by everybody there. And I think it was a very good tribal. I think it's very funny that I think Survivor aired these moments in the 2 episodes beforehand, before they completely blew it afterwards. And I think a lot of these moments happen in seasons in the 30s, in seasons in the 20s that never got aired. Grievances, problems with sexism, racism that had conclusions, but were either aired in a way to just be an antagonizing edit or not aired at all. You think of Joe Anglim in season 38 and him using the N-word, right? But it was used here specifically to make Survivor look good before they did everything wrong. So yes, I do think it was handled well, but I think it was aired in a way to have a defense for what comes after. And I think
that is a very good point. Josh, you want to piggyback off that?
No, you're making really good points, German. I hadn't thought about it that way. I mean, I haven't revisited 39 since it originally aired. And I do think that Survivor production, like, obviously messed up the whole, the whole whatever, all the Kelly stuff, and there's really not any redeeming qualities of like how that was handled. But I do think, I think you're making really good points that like this was shown, but I also just wonder, it's a little bit of what you're saying. It's all these things. So I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but I do also think there's also a time of like culture is starting to, the general populace watching Survivor is also starting to come around on these issues in a way that just, they couldn't, Jamal would have been, oh my gosh, pitchforked, run out of town. If this had happened in like the 20s, imagine him trying to like, have this conversation with somebody, even if it was with somebody like Jack who was responsive and stuff, which would have been less likely if it happened, earlier in Survivor history. But even if it did happen, I just think that the viewers would have received it much more differently than, obviously this is like pre George Floyd, pre 2020 Black Lives Matter movement and all that stuff. Yet I just think like in general, like people were starting to like, I think just the amount of people, the percentage of people watching at home were probably also a little bit more primed to like receive this kind of conversation than they would have been 10, 15 years ago.
So I love what you're saying. And I think the 3 circles that we run in agree with this a lot. But I remember looking at Facebook comment sections of the Survivor Facebook page.
Facebook moms are not like this.
And unfortunately, they were not ready to receive that information whatsoever from Jamal. By the way, Jamal might be my favorite character on this season. I think that every single scene that he was in, the compassion that he showed, the way that he was able to not only be in a very intelligent, like great character, but also provide that good confessional response to everything. He went from his lows, being overly arrogant in the Molly vote to, immediately reconciling with people. He had his, all angles from the top to the bottom to the middle, and having great confessionals on every side of it. Very few other characters in this season have that range. Jamal is great. But unfortunately, as much as I think we love to compliment the Survivor audience that they were ready to accept this, unfortunately, a vast majority of them were still not. And we're still completely ignorant and just said, oh, we don't want to hear this shit. What the fuck is he talking about?
Yes. I'm not saying everybody.
Larger.
Yeah.
Your audience. Yeah.
Us 3, yes, but
and German, no, seriously, you're making really good points again. I'm there's always going to be those people. I mean, let's get political. Let's talk about this election. There's 50% of the country right now that pretty much disagrees fundamentally on some of these issues, and so like
season 42.
I'm saying it would have been like, when you talk about like the early days of Survivor, it would have been like 90% of people who would have just said that, Jamal was crazy. Now it's like, when 39 airs, it's probably 50%. And then nowadays, maybe 35% or something. I don't know. I'm making these numbers
one
up, but
more thing
that's
on like what you just said, right? David Bloomberg, our YX Lost person, put Vesepia in the Hall of Shame for making comments with Sean in season 4 about, hey,
when it originally
they have
aired.
different. Exactly. Back in 2003, I believe, right? Like, oh, why are they talking that they need to form an alliance? You know what I mean? So it's been since the very start of Survivor, like you said. And
I just want to pause. You bring up
crazy.
David Bloomberg, but you're saying that you're using him as an example because
he's had a lot of good
Survivor
improvements and good opinions now.
Exactly. He's a very, very openly liberal person. So
yes.
like
I'm just saying that, like, you look at a mainstream person and their commentary in 2003, and that's what I'm just saying. He's done a lot of improvements and good things since. But I'm just saying a general Survivor commentary that you can look at and still gauge back then. That's what it was. You're right.
And I do want to I want to touch on this question first before we move to that specific tribal and a couple of comparisons. Anyway, question: if this season had old DVD cover, who's 6 players on the cover? I think Elaine, Janet, Tommy, DK,
Nora,
Nora, and I don't know. Probably did I ever say Lauren, Janet, Elaine, Tommy, DK, and Jamal, yes.
You might honestly
you could say up there because Missy is a forefront in the strategy up until
we're going to talk about Missy because okay. So this specific tribal, why? And I saw this question earlier. Why do y'all like? What do you think went into the strategy? And Josh, we'll start with you. What do you think went into the strategy of Kelly giving Dean the idol instead of just playing it? Because I understand that she's trying to like act coy or whatever, but why do you think she went about it this way?
Okay, I'm gonna pass this to Gurman because the details of this exact scenario escape me. I know she gets voted out with 2 idols. I didn't rewatch this tribal council in this.
Okay, Gurman.
I think the big thing you got to remember is when Dean joins the swap tribe, right? The thing that Dean and Kelly immediately connect about is because they have a mutual friend. And they have that, and that's immediately a connection. When you have something that specific that you can talk about, you have way more branching conversation that you can have. I mean, think about it. I know everyone wants to think you jump on Survivor and you have a million conversations with every single person that you go on and you immediately have everything to say. But when you meet a coworker, for the first time and you have a branching similarity, you immediately have way more to go on. And Dean and Kelly had that immediately. Kelly immediately is going to assume based on that, hey, Dean is going to be somebody who's here with me for the long term versus a Nora who, is Nora versus a Jack and Jamal who were against her in the first Molly vote, right? Mm-hmm. Dean is this new factor who she has a personal connection with. Was Kelly wrong? Yes. However, I think based on their personal connection, thought, maybe we could take this for a long-term route. And I understand that. She was wrong, but it's not the worst mistake in Survivor history. It's something that you can build off of.
Yeah, and honestly, if we go to the next episode, I don't even think, yes, she gets voted out with 2 idols, and I know that we rightfully shit on James for that happening. And I understand that people are not going to try to shit on Kelly for anything that happens this season, but she does go home with 2 idols in her pocket and just talk. This is where the air kind of gets sucked out. And for me, watching it today, it's where I checked out. I just got on my laptop and I just had it playing and I would just turn around. It's like, yep, it's still happening. The merge episode is also 2 parts. So most of it dedicating so much time. You're dedicating so much time to what's going on, and you can't avoid it because it's a part of the entire merge vote is basically, Kelly saying, hey, I kind of don't want to Dan to be here, but I also, I have to check my personal stuff at the door, and I have to get rid of Missy because Missy's a threat. Even though her and Missy had talked about everything that Missy was agreeing that had happened to her, but that she actually said wasn't happening to her, whatever. And so Kelly is still trying to make game moves, and all of a sudden, this thing gets switched. So now Missy and Elizabeth think, oh, okay, well, if Kelly's going to try to do this, then we're going to try to do that. And they bring poor Janet into all of it. And Janet is I would say, the actual victim. I know that, what's his nuts? What is this? The tool bag, Aaron. Aaron even tries to say, oh, yeah, Janet's trying to make herself look like the victim. It's like, dude, do you understand how tone deaf that is? But y'all talked a lot, very highly about Jamal, and I would say the people that decide to vote with Kelly that round, I feel like were just because they were being empathetic about it. Nora, Karishma, Jamal, and Janet were all doing it because they were. It was almost a reason outside of the game, because I have to believe that they knew that certain folks were not going to be voting that way. And if we want to just briefly touch on how that episode is edited, we have a lot of text on the screen, stuff that we haven't seen since Terry Dietz's son got evacuated, I believe, or, how do y'all think, and I don't want to touch on it too much, but how do y'all think that they hold it from a TV aspect?
So I want to just address one little thing real quick, and then I'm going to drop the mic just for a moment, not talk about it too much further. So this episode is titled, "We Made It to the Merge," with an exclamation mark. The episode where Sue leaves is called Outraged. This has no real warning for people that came into except for the brief flash for 1 second.
Yeah, this is mature audience. Yeah.
But people go off of 7 episodes of the pre-merge where we are, having fun, having a good time, and then it's an episode titled "We Made It to the Merge," featuring 2 hours of torture. What,
Josh?
The fuck?
Josh. No. Okay. Is that Jack? No. Okay. No. It's the way that
on this, right? I think that Survivor really loved the moment where they show Kelly talking to the producer,
yes.
Oh, we can step in if you want us to. That's not what needs to happen. If they see that people are uncomfortable, multiple people in confessionals actually uncomfortable, they need to have the conversation before, and then just not just including, oh, well, we asked Kelly if she was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Bro, you were watching the footage for fucking 20 days.
They kept doing. They kept flashing scenes as she's saying, oh, yeah, this. And they're like, oh, yeah, there you go. There you go. And all I can think about is, because of the way that I watch this, roughly 15-ish days ago, I watched Survivor China, and they're the moments with Jean Robert in the tent or in the camp with Amanda and Courtney, and it's played pretty much for laughs. In Thailand, the argument between Ted and Gandia played for laughs at the All-Star reunion. Where it's like, oh, our favorite argument. It's like, okay, you understand what that context is, right? Here, it still comes off as tone deaf because it's like, oh, well, we talked to him, so it's fine. It's all good. And they even, when they go to Janet and they're like, hey, we want to do this, and Janet's like, yeah, because of that talk that we had earlier, and they're referencing production having the talk with them. You can't escape any of it. And when Kelly gets voted out and they cut to Dan and he's like, yeah, you put that torch down. It's like, that's fucked up. How are y'all going to show this? They were still trying to make the TV episode exciting by oh yeah, for voting confessionals they only showed Kelly and Dan's, and that's it. They were still trying to push this. Oh, it's Kelly versus Dan as a TV thing. It's not Kelly versus Dan other thing. But
address one other thing when Jamal goes home, where Jeff Probst goes on the attack against Dan in that tribal council. And
Yeah, I will never give it up.
Yeah, the one line we always need to go back to is Jeff's like, I'm never going to let this go. And we're like, cool, Jeff speaking for the audience, right? Guess what? Next episode and throughout Dan like being there until the time Dan is gone, Jeff never fucking talks about it again. Jeff says, I'm never going to let this go, audience. Boom, I'm the fucking man, and I'm going to fucking, talk about this guy until he's gone. You didn't. You just let Dan keep having multiple confessionals every episode. Dan
and his son comes
many confessionals before this and after this, just talking about the game and how, and we get to listen to multiple times where we have to hear Dan's perspective on things. We know Dan would be a 0 vote fucking loser, but we still have to have multiple episodes of him being treated as a narrator. What are we doing? What are we fucking doing?
Josh, if you can muster speech, yes.
I couldn't even. I had to go. I've literally through hundreds of podcasts, maybe dozens at least. I've kept this bottle on my back shelf. It's a bottle of scotch here that I bought in Scotland.
Cheers.
And I knew there was going to be a moment on some podcasts I was going to need to break it out. I didn't plan this. I didn't think about it. But as soon as we started down this path, I was like, okay, this is the time. I got to break this thing off the back of my shelf. I usually hide it under this hat. I even take work calls with this thing here. Never had to break it out until now.
Point, Josh.
Don't worry. I'm not giving up any like sober chips or anything. Okay, guys, don't be that worried about me. But I will say, this is one of the lowest of low moments in Survivor history. As a Survivor fan, I always say there is no bad seasons of Survivor. Every season, I think, still holds up as a TV show that you should watch, that I would recommend to anybody, with the caveat that there is some horrible shit that happens on some of these seasons. And I think the thing that makes this the worst part of it for me is, okay, they're casting people. Sure, Dan is a shitbag, whatever. But they can't control, you don't know people, when you put them on a show. And you don't know how they're going to control themselves or not control themselves or act or whatever. Horrible things are going to happen when you put a bunch of people together in high-stress situations. It's going to happen. This is one of the worst things that's happened, for sure. But it is, for me, fundamentally about how production handled it all and how unprepared they were. That's the word for me that I go back to, is they had no plan, no preparation, and it showed. And it's just you're talking about Thailand, this something like this has happened. It's not just Thailand. This definitely has happened in other circumstances along the show where people have been made to feel uncomfortable sexually, physically by other people on the show. You reference China. That is also an uncomfortable watch in hindsight now. And I think the show they had plenty of opportunity before this to be proactive to prevent this, and they did not. And it's a stain on the show's history. It's one of the worst moments ever. And I think, even though, again, I do think I'm so glad that they took this moment seriously. And I do believe that there are measures in place now to prevent anything like this happening again. I know people in the new era talk about how they're not even allowed to cuddle, and they're in Fiji, they don't need to cuddle. I've been to those islands. I've been to the Mamanuca Islands. You do not need to cuddle to stay warm out there. Dan is not, whatever. But I think that I'm on one hand glad that they took this moment seriously, but also it's just a tragedy that they took a moment like this. And just what the hell? Kelly, she was, I genuinely feel horrible for her. Obviously, is this the worst thing that's ever happened to somebody in the history of the world? Of course not. So people that I've heard this case, it's oh, he's just he's just making her uncomfortable or just touching her. But it's not like he was assaulting her in a violent way or something. But it's not about that. The people that, if you don't understand that being made to feel uncomfortable because of someone's sexual advances, because of their physical advances, even if they don't intend it to be sexual, it does not mean it's not sexual in manner. And I think Janet has a great confessional at the end of the season after this, and she talks about how that when people interact like this. They're playing with fire, and you don't, even if you don't intend for your actions to be hurtful, harmful. Again, going back to the Jamal and Jack thing, racist, whatever it is, Jamal with Kelly, sexist. Even if you don't intend for that, does not mean that effect is not being felt by the person. And so I just, whatever. I might have drank too much whiskey, and now I'm rambling.
Yeah, the thing that needs to be said on this, right, is that in episode 2, Kelly went to Dan and said, hey, these things are making me uncomfortable. It would be a different story, in my opinion, if Dan went 8 episodes and didn't even know that he was doing something wrong. Dan was told within the first 5 days of Survivor that what he was doing made somebody else uncomfortable. So we can't ever use, like, oh, he didn't know, a mistake, anything like that. Like, he was just bumbling around and made errors. He knew from the start that this was something that was a no-no, but he continued doing those actions throughout, and then did them to other people as well.
Well, and then the other people tried to turn it into a game thing. They tried to turn, well, Dan, you've never made me feel uncomfortable, which means that she has to be wrong because she's just too sensitive or whatever it is. And I want to turn this into a game. I want to, because, I don't want to, just morally, I don't want Island of the Idols to go longer than an hour because I just can't. I can't.
No, let's get out of here. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
But I want to.
I yapped too much.
To the strategic part of the situation is, now all of a sudden we've got Jamal Karishma, who has been on the bottom the entire time, Janet, and sort of Nora on the bottom. Nora's able to get back in with the crew. And Janet, after this hiccup that they all try, she says that she wants to quit because she just feels like everyone hates her because of everything. But they get rid of Jamal, even though he has stood up for the situation. And then from there, like I said, I just check out. Like, everything that happens this season after that, I'm just like, yeah, I don't care. Oh, I don't care. Family visit. This is the only family visit that I don't care about anything that happens during the
so much time to Dan during that family visit.
Yeah, because he
did that to Shannon Elkins or Ben Browning after the things they said.
Yeah, so I do want to actually talk about the final 4 because I feel like Lauren is the best player of the season. I think that Lauren, there's a lot of moments of season where I feel like she's in full control of Tommy and what Tommy is doing. Mm-hmm. I think that it was the right idea to get rid of her, on everyone's account at that point. Final 3. Going in here when I was watching Final Tribal, it's so overly chaotic, and I think it might just be the most entertaining thing that happens at the merge is the Final Tribal, because it's just basically Dean and Tommy arguing with each other, and Nora trying to make points, but once again, she just kind of runs into a group of people that just don't respect her game. I want to go back to what one of y'all brought up earlier about the social strategic part of this new era that we are going into, starting with 39. Dean straight up says, I didn't socialize with anyone that I wasn't working with. He says it during Final Tribal. Who do you want? Do you want it's going to be honest and say that I'm going to do this, or do you want Tommy who's like exploiting it and lying and all that? And I'm like, I'd probably still take Tommy, Dean, because it is a social game. And if you're not if you're just icing people out because you're not going to work with them, that's bad gameplay. And he kept trying to flex, I had all this jewelry and I was winning challenges and I was doing this and I was doing that. And Tommy was telling me all this stuff that was going on. So yeah, but Tommy was hearing it from these people. You weren't. Tommy was hearing it, and I don't think that I'm not that high on Tommy, but socially, Tommy played a great game. They had to ask him, who was your actual number 1? Because a lot of people thought that they were, and he said it was Lauren. What did y'all think about this Final 3 as a whole? Were you pulling for certain folks? Did you feel like if Lauren had gotten there, she would have won? Do you feel like if Janet had got there, she would have won? Just overall, and Josh, we'll start with you.
Gertman, you had a great point in the beginning of the episode. beginning of the podcast, Tommy, top tier winner for me as well. I think that he is an underrated Survivor winner. He's just not as charismatic as a lot of people come across on TV. But I do think that he understood the fundamentals of Survivor, of it being a social game. I mean, we haven't talked about this, but let's just be explicit. Like, he's the only winner of the 30s that doesn't win a challenge or have an idol. He's the only person on his season, right, in the post-merge that doesn't go to the island of the idols. I believe that's correct. If not, it's like at least the final three. Well, I know he didn't go. I don't know. I just know that by the end of the season, you're getting towards the end, and every single one of them had been to like Island of the Idols, like to visit Robinson.
Nora and Dean definitely did. Lauren did.
Nora did.
Janet did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nora has the best Island of the Isles visit of the entire season, where she has to go back and convince everyone that she needs to be the caller, and she lies to everyone like, "Oh, you have to unanimously agree my role," without even knowing what it is, and they're like, "What are you fucking talking about?"
And then they make her set the judge. But Josh, continue.
My favorite moments of the entire season. That was a really good moment.
One of my favorite moments of the entire season was, I want to say this, is the final four when Nora wins immunity and she has to decide to put herself in the fire. And this is why I will say that Tommy is the better player than Lauren, is because at that point, I think Lauren and Tommy they were in sync. I don't know if I could have distinguished between the two of them, which is the better, but he had set things up with Nora so that when this moment happened, she was going to pick him. And the comedy of her talking to Dean and saying, "Dean, you're on fire right now. You are doing great, but you are literally going to be on fire tonight. You're doing Final Four Fire Maker." And like that is one of my all-time favorite moments of Survivor. Honestly, is her trying to weirdly like give this speech about the fire thing, and like Lauren is like distraught because she knows she's probably going to lose and all this. Like it's like it.
Oh no! Did his audio cut out on you? Yeah. Josh, your audio cut out. Nope, can't hear you.
I'll go for a little bit then. And the thing I love to jump off of that is that Tommy kept sending Nora to talk to Lauren, messing her up even further while Tommy coached Dean. And that was fucking amazing strategy on Tommy's part. Tommy completely ruined Lauren's state. I can hear you again.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, no, Gerbert, you're right on. I don't have anything more to say. Oh, okay, all right. I'll just have to say this. I don't know if any of you guys are Lord of the Rings fans, but like I feel like Jason was Boromir.
Oh no, cut out again. It cut out. It cut out again.
Yeah. I also love that Nora was crushing on Dean in the end game, where Nora was calling him Pretty Dean and like, "Oh, he took me on the reward. Is this a date?" But I think
ironically, you know who she dated, right? He dated Jamie from Guatemala. Did you guys know that? Is that a thing that people?
Right now,
yeah, she dated Jamie from Guatemala.
I think when it comes to the final three, I think the original question here, I think Dean only played the game in the last 6 days. I think that Nora was the female coach more than Debbie Wanner was. And I think that Tommy played an excellent social game, an excellent strategic game. He only messed up, in a didn't vote perfectly sense in the round that Jason went home. But okay, it was a 4-4 split vote right after a fucking swap. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Tommy played an amazing game and did hardly anything wrong. I think where I'm upset with Tommy is, where I'm upset with everybody in this season is he took advantage of the most gross situation in Survivor history.
Exactly.
And then,
but they don't show that because you can't have the winner have a negative edit.
Yeah, but clearly he wanted Dan to stay in the end. And clearly, based on everything you could see, Dan was in his endgame final three plans. And he defended Dan as far as he could and rode somebody to the end to be a final three GOAT. Not because they were just a Jake in 45 or a Romeo in 42, but because they were a disgusting human being that he could beat in the end. And it's a little gross
situation. Yeah. And as we start to wrap up with everything, I'm so glad I have Winners at War. Like, I think that Winners at War is a bit overrated. It's good, but I'm glad that I have a palate cleanser. Overall thoughts on the season. I know everyone's been waiting for this. Am I going to put it higher or lower than Thailand this time around? Once again, I kind of went into it. It's like, okay, just if you can just get this out of your head about like after the merge 2 episodes, is this a good season? And I would say, I mean, yeah, sure, it is, but there's so much of how people randomly hate 43 because Gabler wins. Like that's the only reason they hate 43. That is 39 is my 43, where 39 does have a very fun pre-merge. It has a lot of fun characters that I would want to see play again. But because of that moment, and because it sucks the air out of everything that happens past it, and because he lasts for so long, and because we're supposed to somehow still like Missy and all of it, I am going to give Island of the Idols, I'm going to give it a 1.5. And I also gave Thailand a 1.5. I'm going to put it above Thailand. So out through 39 seasons, Island of the Idols is number 38. Josh, 1 or 2 players from this season that you would want to see back for 50.
I just got to say Janet, because we haven't talked about her enough here. She is robbed at the end here. She is the one person that sticks up for, Kelly in the midst of this. Jamal too, but and that's left at the end there. And she has the end game in her sights and is robbed by one of the dumbest twists that they've thrown in the game ever with the Idol Nullifier. The Idol Nullifier is so stupid. I hope we never see it again. It is a tool of oppression from the majority to snuff out the minority. It is not what you want to see in Survivor. You want to see people use advantages and idols to escape the tyranny of the majority, not for the majority to be able to snuff out people who, are going to be able to scrap their way to the end. So I just think Janet, robbed Queen, robbed G. Otis, absolutely would love to see her again. I know she's getting kind of older now. But I just think that she was a champ. God, I love her. We did not talk about her enough on this season.
Yeah. Garmin?
So first off, I would love Island of the Applebees, where Karishma and Liz are two.
Sitcom.
With Karishma and Liz heads. So Karishma's my number 1, and then Jamal's my number 2.
For me, I mean, for 50, if we're talking 50, and yes, let's say they do actually bring people, because they brought back Sheehan for All Stars, so the only season that they've really had any type of real erasure to is Guatemala, and there's nothing really problematic that happens that season. I do feel like because enough time has passed, I guess. For me, I feel like Janet would be a shoo-in as America's sweetheart from this season, and I would honestly, I'd probably put Lauren. I put Lauren too, because I felt like she was a force this season. DK Chillin, I feel like he works here, but I don't need him again. I feel like Nora works here, but we don't really need Nora 2.0. Elaine, I feel like would be pretty fun to watch again. And I mean, I feel like even people like Karishma, who I really did enjoy, I feel like we unless you said, unless we had a sitcom with her and Liz, which I would watch every episode for because I'm in love with Liz. I really don't. But we've got 2 minutes before we hit the hour, and I'm not doing that. I'm not talking about Island Else for an hour. Josh, what do you have going? What do you got coming up with?
At Josh Kettles on Twitter. Follow me there. You'll find out everything you need to know. Whatever.
Both of you, thank you so much for doing this. July 10th is the last day of this, so I'm going to be live streaming all day. Both of you have an open invite if you wanted to hop on at any point throughout that day, just to say, hey, what's up? But thank you both for talking about such a rough season. And thank you to everyone in the comments again. We've got 6-ish more days. So I'm really looking forward to being in the end game with everyone. We've got Winners at War tomorrow. And yeah, thank you everyone again. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the other side.